Now, and time now to visit with our good friend Rebecca Harold, better known as the Privacy Professor, to try to keep everybody safe when it comes to working with their computers. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
How are you?
Great.
Well, it's a good thing you're here because we just had a story yesterday talking about Chipotle, and I don't know how this restaurant can get a break. I feel like they're always in the headlines, but a lot of times I feel like when we talk about these stories, they're like, oh, that's in New York or California. We don't have to worry about that here. When it was released this morning, it's like, no, those restaurants here in Des Moines, Ames, those areas, they were affected by having some information stolen from customers. So it kind of explained what happened.
Exactly. So really it's virtually all of their restaurants. I mean, they're trying to say, oh, it's not all of them, but you know, they have 2,250 or so restaurants throughout the entire U.S. And it's not just, you know, their burritos and stuff. They also have pizzerias. I didn't realize
that.
Yeah, so those were hit too. But basically what happened was there was malware that was loaded on their point of sale devices.
Okay.
So the point of sale devices, that's where you slide your credit card through. And if you don't have those secured appropriately, we've talked about skimmers before and so on. If you have malware that's loaded on there, this malware can actually copy and take all of the different information off of that mag stripe, which it sounds like it did, and it can send all of that data back to the crooks that loaded it there. So it's,
now, how does it get on the system in the first place?
Yes, well, there's a variety of ways. Sometimes it's through the skimmers that we've talked about before, but those typically only hit what's local. So if you put a skimmer on the local one, it will generally just hit there because it's a physical device. But with this particular instance, it might have been through some sort of phishing attempt, through maybe something that one of their employees fell for. So, you know, they might have clicked on a link, it's someone who is responsible for the network, and it might have got all of the different IDs and passwords that that person had access to, such as to the point of sale system. And then the crooks then were able to get into the point of sale system that way. It could have been through a third-party vendor. And in fact, when I saw this about Chipotle, I thought about another conversation I had with both of you back in 2014, because it's just deja vu all over again, you know? So what happened then? Do you remember when the Jimmy John's, the Dairy Queen, the Chick-fil-A's in 2014, their point of sale systems were also hit with malware, and it collected all of the data that was being scanned through the different credit cards.
Wow.
And again, it was because of, in that particular instance, a third party that was someone contracted that was actually managing all of those point of sale devices.
So they had access.
So they had access. Oh yeah, yeah. And you know, the crooks know if they go to the different vendors who manage those point of sale systems, you can get a lot of money. I mean, remember the famous quote by Willie Sutton, the bank robber? Why do you rob banks? You go where the money is, right? So you're going to go where the money is.
Yeah, think of how much money is exchanged on those different businesses like that.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, we're looking at millions potentially of people whose data was taken off of those stripes. And back in 2014, that ended up being 110 million people who were impacted. And they didn't realize it until over the months they kept finding more and more people who was impacted by all of the lack of security within the systems that are running these payment systems.
So you think it's more the third-party companies that are responsible for something like this as opposed to the people that work there?
Well, I think it's a combination. So I've done a lot of vendor or third-party risk assessments, and I can tell you a lot of times their security is lax because they aren't the primary focus, their clients are, when it comes to security. So, you know, the clients, the restaurants and the Target stores and so on, they're the ones who are looked at and known by the general public. And so if they have a breach, they're the ones who's going to get their names in the headline.
Finger's pointing,
But it's actually these third parties who are managing a lot of this. So it could be the third parties that have lax security. It could be an insider with the actual organization itself. and different insiders have different motivations. Sometimes they don't have any motivation, it's just an accident. So maybe they fell for a phishing attempt. But some of my clients through the years actually had malicious insiders who knew that they were going to get fired, or they were upset because they didn't get a promotion. So they did things like this in order to give the company a bad name, lower the brand, so to speak, get even, and at the same time make some money off of the data that they're selling to the crooks that are out there. So, these point of sale systems are something that's very vulnerable, but we keep seeing it over and over again, like in 2014 with Chipotle just here last week. We see it in other places. Target. I don't know if you saw, they just settled through all the different state attorney generals.
How long is that?
That was years ago.
2013.
That was 2013.
So 2013. And guess how that huge breach occurred? There was a third party, and the third party got access into the Target network to do maintenance on their HVAC system, their heating and cooling system. Well, guess what? That pathway had a vulnerability. The third party was kind of lax in their security, and so the cyber crooks got into the network, and once they got into the network, guess where they went? They went to the point of sale systems
where the money is,
and they loaded the malware, and then that's how they were able to collect all of that different data. And they are just now coming through the state attorney generals to a settlement with regard to what is the fine that Target's going to pay for that after negotiations. And
after all those years.
Yeah.
So do you have any advice for us? Because we have no control if we shop at any of these locations who they use for their specific devices. I mean, you tell us how to keep our specific devices safe, but I can't go to Target and be like, okay, who's your third party vendor?
Right.
Before I pay, it's like that's ridiculous. So
it is ridiculous. I ask that sometimes and they give me a weird look. I don't know what you're talking about, but you're right. So what you got to do, what I'm starting to do, especially with restaurants, I pay in cash a lot of times now.
Is cash the easiest answer?
Cash is the safest because there's nothing digital involved there. Or cash cards. So, a lot of times you get $10, $15, $50 cash cards for maybe a Chipotle, maybe another type of restaurant. Use your cash cards, because then even if they compromise that card, it doesn't have all of your...
It's a limited amount, number one, and B, doesn't have your personal information.
Well, it has some
but not a lot.
It doesn't have everything like these other credit cards.
Okay.
Now, what about using like an Apple Pay or the Google thing? Is that any safer, or is that all vulnerable as well?
Well, anytime you have digital types of money or currency involved, there's going to be security risk. There's just a different type of security risk there. So when you're talking about Apple Pay and all the other digital payment systems, then you need to look at how are they securing those apps that people are using. You need to make sure that the transmission is encrypted. Early on with some of those different pay systems, not necessarily Apple, but they weren't encrypting the data that was being sent to the different payment organizations. And so when you don't have that data encrypted, anybody who's on that wireless network can capture that data and then use it elsewhere.
Intercept it,
So it's many different types, but with the actual Target thing, I thought it was worth mentioning. It was 18.5 million that 47 of our attorney generals, 47, so in 46 states, including Iowa, and then also the District of Columbia, came to an agreement. Now that 18.5 million, you might be thinking, well, how much can I get? Because I shop at Target. Well, you aren't going to get anything. So what they did was, it's a different amount for each state. The largest award went to California. They got $4 million. But Iowa got $229,000. And so what the agreement is for that is we're going to put it towards consumer education.
Got it.
So we're giving consumer education here, but they're going to do more things. But I wanted to let your viewers know there's still a class action suit going on with the Target case. So that involves, they were asking then for $10 million, but after they heard about this settlement, they're thinking, well, maybe we should ask for more money. So that's another case that Target's going to have
now,
to pay
people
for.
want to get some information about your company. Where can they go?
Yeah, they can go to Symbis360.com. And that is my current organization that I use to help organizations to protect their data so they don't have these types of breaches to occur. And also to help with the general public.
And on Twitter, where do people find you there?
Yes, Privacy Prof. So you can go to Privacy Prof on Twitter, and I try to put out a few things each day.
Wonderful.
Perfect. Thank you. Great to see you, and thanks for keeping us up to
thanks.
date on what's happening.